Hey guys, it's been a while, and if you remember last video I talked about the front axle disconnect. Well, that is my fad. I'm going to tell you how I broke it and what my options are. So guys, like I said, it's been a while. Been really busy the last couple months. I've had the opportunity to spend some time at King of the Hammers. I was part of a race team, so I first want to say thank you to Northwest Jeepcast for being part of that team. That was fun. However, the Gladiator has finally broken something significant. My last video we talked about the front axle disconnect. Do you keep the front axle disconnect, or do you eliminate it through the aftermarket, which is kind of a popular thing? Well, I'm kind of at a crossroads as far as what I'm going to do because of my situation with the Gladiator. I'll explain. If you remember, the Gladiator's running 40-inch tires and a 6.5-inch lift. Because my lift is so high, because I want to get over bigger obstacles, my front driveline angle isn't the best. You can calculate your driveline angle pretty simply. You need to grab something like this, which is just like a little angle finder. It's magnetic. And what you want to do is you want to get this, the cap of the U-joint right here, you want it facing down, and you get a reading off that. And then you, on the body of the driveline, you get that angle there. And then you do the same thing up at the transfer case. And then if you go to Spicer.com, you can put in those figures and it'll give you a operation angle of the driveline. So that's how you can determine that really quickly. So at the differential, you want about an 8, maybe a 9 degree angle. And currently I have 11 degrees. So if I eliminate my fad, my front driveline will constantly turn. And what that will do is create a significant amount of vibration, and essentially I'll be wearing out U-joints left and right. So that's not a real option for me. And I don't have any more ability really to correct my caster in the front axle. So I'm kind of at the max. So with that said, I have to figure out a way to keep some sort of disconnect. Now, option one is I can change to hubs, okay? But to date, I don't know of any hubs that are available for the JT or JL. What most people are doing are just swapping out the front axle, and that's not an option for me because remember, this is a hobbyist build, right? And the whole channel premise is what can you do with a hobbyist build type Gladiator with off-the-shelf parts? We're not building a SEMA rig here, we're throwing 1-tons underneath it. And frankly, I don't know if I need to throw 1-tons on it just yet. This thing's got 18,000 miles. It has wheeled some of the hardest trails. It's been to the Rubicon and back. And I still haven't broken anything. And those are hard trail miles. This thing goes out almost at least once a week, sometimes twice a week down here in Sand Hollow. And I really haven't, other than a couple issues with drive lines and things, I really haven't broken anything until now. So anyhow, I'm going to get to it, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about as far as the broken pieces with the fad. This is what's left of my fad. Just a bunch of pieces. So I pulled out the broken pieces just so it wouldn't bugger up anything else inside until I take this back to the dealership and they replace everything. I spared you the pain of me just removing this. It was just a couple bolts. Sits on there like this, yada yada yada. Sits on there like this. Take a couple bolts off. There's a skid plate. Take that off. Anyways, I left it plugged in because I'm lazy. But anyhow, this is your axle disconnect. Right now I'm spinning the drive line and you can see the axle spinning there. And what you're not seeing is all these pieces that I've taken out that were broken. Hence, that's why my four-wheel drive is not working. How this works is this little fork, this coupling sits in that little fork, just like that. And it's in here, like so. And it goes back and forth when you engage it in four-wheel drive. The computer tells it to engage. And that fork shifts over that coupling to join these two axles together and hence turn the outside. I've noticed too that the axle actually did split right there as well. Now, am I disappointed? I'm disappointed that I have to be here and deal with it. And I'm running 40-inch tires with a diesel on a stock Rubicon 44 front end. So it's expected. I was at the King of the Hammers. I decided to, it was at night, and I decided to take this thing up a popular trail. It's called Chocolate Thunder. And probably the worst thing I probably could have done, because it was completely packed and crowded and, you know, a lot of hecklers. But, you know, I went all that way and I said, you know, why not? The actual trail is actually not too difficult. It's got, you know, depending which line you take, you can make it as hard as you want. But anyhow, I just kind of went up the common line. And as soon as this tire here on the passenger side, as soon as it approached the rock and I put it under power, I heard this pop. And so initially I thought, oh no, I finally broke something. So anyhow, so I got out of the vehicle. I checked my U-joints on both sides and they look good. I knew that my brake was internal. And you know, at that point, then you can narrow it down. I either broke the axle where I can't see it, or I broke the FAD, and probably the least likely is I broke, you know, a ring gear, you know, tooth off the ring gear or something. Got it back to camp and did a quick diagnosis, and lo and behold, it was the FAD. To be clear, when the axle broke, or the FAD I should say, I wasn't in the gas or on the throttle. I was actually just approaching the rock, and as soon as the front tire hit it and there was a little bit of tension, that's when the pop happened. I don't think that particular incident broke the actual FAD. I think it was weakened over time after all the, you know, hard trail miles on it. Just a culmination of a lot of hard trails, and it finally showed its weakness. So one of the reasons why the FAD is so critical on the Gladiator or JL is, if you remember, with the four-wheel drive system, everything is computer controlled, okay? And it takes into account ABS lines, the FAD itself, that's electronically controlled. And what happens, if there's something wrong with the FAD, it signals the computer to basically stop everything, as far as it's gonna disengage the lockers, disengage the sway bar, and the fork itself in the FAD is not going to move. So therefore, when you shift the transfer case into low range, nothing's going to happen. You will have low range, but it's not going to turn your front axles, because that little fork is just going to leave the two axles that are joined together, it's going to leave them separated. So essentially, you're going to be on the trail and you're going to have no power to the front wheels. Now, I talked a little bit how you can get around that when we had in the last video. I tore out an ABS line, and you can do that if you have like a Taser Mini. There's some hacks you can get around. Problem I had was kind of like the perfect storm. I broke the FAD and I lost power to the driver wheel, but the locker was engaged on the driver's side. So I had three-wheel drive until the locker disengaged when the computer found out that something's wrong with the FAD. So even with the locker engaged, I didn't have three-wheel drive. And if you remember, traditionally, from the old school, four-wheel drives, if you have a locker in the front differential, what happens is if you break one side or the other, you can just turn the hub, if you have hubs, and it'll basically keep that axle from spinning, and then you can use the locker to get yourself off the trail in three-wheel drive. That's not the case with this. So anyhow, my options are, do I replace it with a one-piece axle design, which I just talked about? I can't because of my lift height. I'm gonna probably go with RCVs that basically have a two-piece system just like the factory. RCVs are warranted up to a 43-inch tire. And honestly, guys, I wheel this pretty hard, You can see the condition of the vehicle. I don't abuse it, but I use it. So I think if I can get 18,000 miles out of the stock factory axles running 40s on some of the hardest trails, I should be able to get double or triple that with some RCVs. I appreciate you watching. Please hit that subscribe button. That way I'll know if these videos are even helpful for you. And hopefully I'll see you on the trail. Hit me up if you come in the Sand Hollow area. Cheers.